What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Hedge podcast. Throwing a little bit of a curveball at you guys this week. There's no reason for you guys to know this, but here in Houston, we're having some really serious weather issues that don't make for very good online conversations when your internet and electricity continues to keep going out. There's people here in Houston right now that haven't had electricity since Wednesday, so we're having some serious issues here. However, as is with any endeavor that anybody ever decides to take on, it's all about the people that are supporting you, and I have the best co-host in the world. So JD is holding down the fort this week, and he has a phenomenal conversation with the great Adam Gray, and he was able to carry on the show without me. So hopefully that this will be the last week we're kind of having this like back and forth with me being able to jump on and schedules and all that stuff, and then we'll jump back on it next week. But the other thing I wanted to remind you guys is to take a look at JD's channel, which everything is linked below, and his podcast that he has with Professor Gertz and Canadian Chris called Clear the Mechanism. It's a baseball podcast, baseball card podcast. Those guys are killing it right now. They have some of the best baseball card conversation that you can think of. So another great podcast for you guys to consume as well. And then also I wanted to give you guys a heads up. We are making some really good progress towards building a new network of content that we're going to be putting together underneath the Card Hedge flag. So just heads up there. We're getting really close on all that stuff. So we will be announcing something formally very soon. But anyway, with no further ado, I'll give you my man JD and the great Adam Gray on this week's episode of the Card Hedge podcast. I hope you guys enjoy it. Leave us a comment. Leave us a like, subscribe if you haven't already, hit the notification bells, all that good stuff, and we'll catch you guys next week. Love y'all. Peace.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Card Hedge podcast. Your host, JD, today, flying solo. No Omar. But we do have a special guest today. This person is well known throughout the hobby. And I've been really trying to lock down an interview with this individual because I think he does a wonderful job with a variety of things or projects or whatever we want to call it in this space. And it's someone that I have grown to really kind of be fond of. So without further ado, let's bring in our guest, Mr. Adam Gray. Welcome, my friend. How are you?
You know, I'm so good, JD. I'm grateful that you have me on the show, and I'm realizing just as soon as we start that this probably wasn't the day to debut my kid's Father's Day Bluey shirt for me, but here we are. We're keeping it real. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Like I said, I'm real excited to finally sync up our schedules, man. I think between the two of us, we're leading the league and being busy. So yeah, I'm happy we get to spend a little bit of time and chat some cards and some other things. And that's really it, man. So I'd like to start because I know each of us, kind of have some things going on. I found you back in early 2020 when I was getting back into cards. I was looking for a podcast to listen to, driving to and from work. And I stumbled across your podcast. And I took the bait, hook, line, and sinker. I just thought like it was really well done. You were very well spoken. And the content you were creating was really consumable. And then we kind of you ventured into other avenues or arenas. And one of those being Basketball Card Fanatic magazine. So why don't we kind of just start there? What was the vision with the magazine?
Well, appreciate the kind words. First off, in my experience in the hobby, and I think this is currently true, a lot of people like to talk about value type stuff. They like to talk about, the hobby content that's consumed the most is one of a few different types. It's either related to increases in or losses in values,
Mm-hmm.
or it's related to salacious, dramatic things that are, about the people who are collecting, or the people who are buying and selling, or it's related to, sort of what people would call like the hobby watchdogs, people who are watching out for bad actors. Those are kind of the groups.
Sure.
And to me, that's really unfortunate, because I don't think any of those things I don't think they actually are about the cards. And I've always been big on the cards, right? I've collected first set I put together was 33 years ago, right? And I've been a collector ever since then.
Sure.
I've always loved cards. And so I don't know why. I mean, I have some ideas why some people are down on hearing about cards themselves, right? People think that content that's related to cards can be pumpy, or it can be, can have some negative things. I think for the most part, we just need a lot more of it. We need people talking about cards and why they like them. And so I kind of felt like, what if there was a publication that allowed collectors to say, here's what I like and here's why I like it. And people could say with great enthusiasm, this is what I'm collecting and this is why I think it's really cool, with no fear of like backlash from, commenters talking about how they're trying to pump their cards or whatever. And so we tried that digitally for about 6 months. And the thing that was really clear was there was really an appetite to get a print copy of the magazine. And, despite the fact that it's not cheap, an average magazine, the magazine costs about $10 a month to have it printed and delivered to your home. For us, it actually costs about $8, by the way. So we're not really making anything on that. But people have really loved it. I'd like to say we have thousands of subscribers. We don't. Our total subscriber number hovers around 400. Sure. So it's not a huge thing, but you get your magazine in the mail and you're one of a few hundred people who are getting it, and you're getting passion in each issue. And not only passion though, but like really like a lot of information and smart takes. And so that's, that was kind of the image, was to have something where passionate collectors could have a way to experience other collectors and get something that's nostalgic as a magazine. And I don't have to tell you, it's not like there's a lot of competition out there for magazines.
Sure.
And the reason why is magazines are really hard, man. They're really, really tough.
Yeah. And especially with the, the digital age of, hey, here's the link, download it, and, save on overhead and all that stuff. I do have to say, I read, I remember when you launched and, you were sending out free digital samples for people to read. And I really enjoyed reading and going through the magazine. It is really well done. Full disclosure, I do not subscribe to the magazine. And we talked about that off camera. It's one of those things where it's like, you keep meaning to do it, and then, for whatever reasons you haven't. But it's something I do want to add to my my ordering, because my son has gotten into cards. He's 6, and he's gotten into cards, I'd say the last 6-7 months, really starting to get into Pokemon now. And he's a big LeBron fan because of YouTube. And I'm like, all right, dude, listen, we got to talk like Michael Jordan, Kevin Garnett, Kobe first, and then we can move to LeBron in a little bit. But I think for him too, with him reading and the pictures, it's just a quality piece, so really cool there. And I do have to say, kind of tooting your horn a little bit, like a magazine kind of fits your persona of a storyteller. You've on the podcast, you've told and shared some outstanding stories, and arguably one of my favorite stories of all time. And that was your episode where you discussed the lady you found on eBay in Chicago, in the Chicagoland area. Dude, that might be my favorite story of cards ever, and I had nothing to do with it.
Well, let me say first on that that was the most amazing thing I've ever experienced in the hobby, and that I will ever experience in the hobby. It was incredible.
Yeah.
Let me also say real quick that magazines aren't for everyone,
Yep.
and also I want to make sure that I'm really clear when I was talking about those other types of media that people like to they like to view, they like to partake of. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Sure.
I'm not acting like there's some holier, higher way of
Right.
people should watch what they want. They should view what they want. They should read what they want.
Yep.
But I what I was trying to express is there wasn't really the same like outlet that I thought somebody was spending a lot of energy on. And so with that said, I'm not trying to take a shot at anybody. I just want to make sure.
Yeah. No. And I don't think you're coming across that way.
Okay.
At all. I think you're telling a story about cards, and it's kind of what is the point of all of this, right? It's the card. And I do think I definitely agree with you as a content creator myself. Sometimes the cards get lost in the shuffle of a variety of things. And at the end of the day, it all goes back to this little piece of cardboard.
It does. Yeah.
So I think that's a good spot to always kind of come from, and center yourself on. So, kudos to you for kind of having that vision, because again, it's where it should come from, I think, anyway.
I wish it was more, I wish that people cared more about those things. I asked Dr. Beckett about this.
Yep.
Because there's nobody, I always say he's easily the GOAT of our hobby. He's the guy who I look at the most, for a lot of different reasons. But if you think about, you remember the original Beckett back.
Oh yeah, God yeah.
Remember like it was yesterday, right?
Yep.
The thing that's really interesting about that is they spent so much time on both the price guide portion and the story portion. But what people actually remember most sometimes is the covers.
Yep.
And it's like, well, the cover is just like the easy part.
Yeah.
The stuff on the inside actually takes an incredible amount of time and energy. And so it can be difficult and it can be frustrating, but at the same time, you'll have somebody who reaches out and who says, hey, I read this article that you did on Jambalaya and it informed how I thought about this. I was able to find this detail in your piece that I just didn't know that helped me unlock this other thing. We try to give as much of that as we possibly can. It's hard to do that in 32 to 36 pages a month, but back real quick to, sorry to jump around, but back to the story about Anna. That was the most incredible experience in the hobby in my life. And I've had a lot of them. I've had some crazy stories, man. I could tell you, I have a few that sort of come to my mind right away, that I would love to tell you, but that experience over that year and a half, being able to receive basically, an image or two every day sent to me from a lady who ended up becoming a really close friend of mine. And the images sometimes were blurry. Sometimes you couldn't even tell who was on the card. And I did everything I could to help her. So that it would be as easy as possible for her. But where she was just taking images of cards and saying, hey, are these worth anything, from her late husband, and being able to sort of help her to realize as much as she possibly could, because eBay is it is fraught with difficult issues for people like her. And it was, if anyone hasn't listened to that episode, it's easily the most listened to episode I've ever done. I can't remember what number it is, but
I don't know off the top of my head. I'll find it and I'll link it down below so people can easily access it. But it was phenomenal. Like I was like must listen to content. I'm like waiting to go into work, and then I'm like, all right, day's over, I'm out of here. So I can finish up listening to it. How did that? I guess my question would be this, right? With the experience and stories you have that have unfolded in your collecting journey, how did or did you realize at some point, like, hey, I have like a niche for this, or a talent for telling a story or sharing my experiences in a way that's, easily digestible or whatever the word may be. Have you had that realization at any point in like the professional side of your career in the hobby?
Gosh, that's a good question. Real quick, episode 61. I just found
Okay.
it. So
All right, cool.
episode 61 of the Basketball Card podcast. If anyone wants to go find it, if you forget the link, that's okay.
Yep. No, I will definitely link it.
Okay. So this question, first off, it's really kind. Thank you for saying this thing about being a storyteller. People think like, what are the things that I'm good at? What are the things that I may be better at that other people are? I'd like to think that I'm a pretty good storyteller. I especially in this world.
Yep.
But you always learn when you think that you're really strong at something that you're actually not perfect at it. I remember at one point in time talking about how I thought I was a really good communicator and then realizing along the way that I had some real work to do on my communication skills. And there are these things, right? Like we have them, like where you think you're really good at something and you find out you can be better. But yeah, I had this is so funny. I've never talked about this before. I've thought about it a million times. I had a moment at the national, and I've only been to 2 nationals. So it was either 2018 or 2019. I believe it was 2019. And I did a deal with a couple of Australian guys, some of the nicest guys I've ever met. And when we were talking, like we had this moment where they were asking me some questions. This guy really wanted to buy a couple of big time Scottie Pippen cards that I had. I had a Scottie Pippen PMG from 98.
Oh, wow.
And a Skybox Rubies, I think also from 98. And he really wanted them. And he was offering me an amount that was probably less than market value. But he was such a nice guy, and they'd come from Australia. And this is where I'm totally a sucker. I'm a sucker for people who really need a card more than I do. Right.
Sure.
And who want the card to own the card. And so this guy, he was like, he's trying to talk to me about it. And I said, look, and I just did like the 60-second sort of monologue. I hadn't really thought about it before, but I was like, I wasn't trying to sell him, but I just sort of got to the end of it. And the other guy who he was with, his name's Matt. It's Oz Celtics is his name on Instagram. Okay. Matt stopped and he said, wow. He's like, I have never heard somebody do what you just did. I would buy anything from you. And I was like, that wasn't what I was trying to do. That wasn't the goal. I'm not a salesperson. I've never been a salesperson. People, when I took the job at PWCC, were sure that I was going to take a job in sales, both because that's probably a place where you can make the most money, and because apparently I have sales acumen. I don't find joy in trying to sell things, though. It's not me.
Sure.
And so, but I love telling stories, and so I've had a few of these experiences through the years where I've kind of gone, maybe I am okay at talking about some of these things. And then there are other times, honestly, JD, where I feel like, gosh, I said that like a complete idiot. Why am I so dumb? I wish I was smarter. So I don't know, man. It depends on the day and probably the mood that I woke up in, whether I had enough rest the night before. Yeah. I'm not sure.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. So let's talk a little bit about the PWCC venture. How did that, if you can talk about it, like how did that come about? Because I have always been a fan of PWCC's marketplace and kind of that idea of instantly getting your card, even though it's digital, like you still have instant ownership of it, whether, buying it or winning it in an auction and then paying for it. It's, once you pay, it's pretty much there. How did that all come about?
You mean like the job opportunity?
Yeah. Yep.
So it goes back to Basketball Card Fanatic. BCF, when we started printing, we realized we needed sponsors desperately. Yep. And so I reached out to PWCC, who I had been a fan of, like you, for a long time.
Yep.
Their marketplace and the ability that they provide you in so many different ways. I mean, just their imaging is just easily better than anybody else's.
Yeah,
right?
It's phenomenal. It's the best.
It's the best. And so there's so many things that they do that are so incredible. So I reached out because I really believed in them, and they were really generous. They said, look, what you're trying to do here is basically impossible. We'd love to be able to support that because we see the good that it can do for the hobby. And so they it's not like it's life altering money, but they were able
Sure.
to give us enough to support us to actually like function somewhat.
Yep.
We also gave them the back page on most issues of the magazine as part of that
Okay.
deal. And in that process, I got to know them, and I got to know their head of marketing at the time. His name was Chris Callahan. Super great guy, like just a great guy. And Chris said along the way, he was just always like, if you ever have any like want to leave the world of private equity, a little bit more backstory. So I'm also CPA and have background in private equity and hedge funds, and over a decade in that world. And he could sort of sense that I would rather do the card thing though, and or be involved in cards in some way. And so he said, if you're ever interested, let me know. And I had a moment. It's been almost a year ago, or it's been over a year ago. It's like 14 months ago, where I had an opportunity to leave my nice private equity job for a lot more money in the world of private equity. And it was a lot more money. It was almost twice as much. And I was like, man, I should do this. And then I just started thinking about like my priorities. This is going to sound super like,
no, go for it. Yeah. Let it
like
roll.
Super cheesy, but like, I didn't want to spend so much more of my life just trying to make money. I wanted to do something that was like a passion. I wanted to stop doing the things to me that were just about money. And I wanted to do the things that like I loved. And I for some weird reason, I just love cards. And so I elected to leave the job that I was at, not take the job that was so much higher paying, and to go take this job for PWCC. And the basically the job was to be a content creator / the manager of the influencer relationships at PWCC. And I did that for about a year before the layoffs.
Sure. And what I will say this, I do follow you on Instagram and interact with your content because again, I do think it's well done. And you have a unique ability to be I don't know what the proper word is, but I'm using pitch man, and that's not really where I want to go with it. But you have that ability to be at the forefront of something, but tell the story of cards and cards that were in auctions and things like that. And he did it in a way that I felt wasn't cheesy. And it wasn't, it was just well done. So again, like kind of kudos to you for being, and I think it's more of just your persona than it is necessarily me. And I'm not trying to poo-poo your work or anything, but like, I'm getting the sense that it's just you're a genuine human being and are really passionate about this stuff and have years of experience that lends itself well to doing what you do on a daily basis. So again, and I highly respect that answer of turning down the money. I'm in a profession where, people come at you from all angles all day long. And it's at times like really unbearable. And I've said to my wife numerous times over the last year or two, like, man, I would love to, start seeing what else is out there. I'm looking at real estate. I'm looking at all kinds of different ventures, Card Hedge is growing, starting to make some headway there. So that's good. It's not enough to quit the 9 to 5, but it's still, it's growing. So that's great. And it's been a great experience because my background is not in business. It's in education. And, I work in an industry where I don't really have control of funds. It's taxpayer voted on and things like that. So it's like, you're kind of at the will of the community and kind of the job you're doing and how they value education. And part of my job is to, make sure kids are getting a quality education, but at the same time, also the community values the school and the school system and the different athletic teams and all the different things that we're doing. And it just gets to the point sometimes where it's like, whew, I need a breather, So
what's interesting, JD, is that the grass, there's lots of ways to talk about this. And we talk about it in some way where it's always like the follow your dream, like very like you see this sort of thing on social media all the time. It's like, definitely do the thing that you want to do. But then at the same time, you and I both got 4 kids.
Yep.
We have real responsibilities, mortgages. You have your education background, and I have mine. And it's just hard to strike the balance sometimes of like, what am I supposed to do versus like, what does my family need?
Yeah.
When I think about you, like, there's definitely this grass is greener thing, because I would love to be a teacher. Like, I've always thought I would love to be a teacher. And through like church sort of things, I get to do a lot of teaching with kids, and I love that. And when I say kids, I mean like sort of like younger, like 12 to 18-year-old males. And so it's not, it's not as much like the younger kids, and it's not as much sort of like it's not as much as I'd like, right? Like I get to do it an hour, once every couple of months sort of thing. But I used to do it a lot more. But the thing is, no matter what we do, whether we're like at the head of a huge card company, which would be incredible, right? It'd be amazing to see Card Hedge take off and become like a, not only fund you, but fund lots of employees and become like amazing. Like, if that ever happens, that would be incredible, and I root for that. I hope that does happen.
Same.
And it might. I hope it does. But when it does, it still comes down to like, okay, do I have everything else in my life where it needs to be? Am I going to be content then? And with BCF, like, BCF's probably in the same sort of position as Card Hedge. It earns us some money. I'm really grateful for it. It's not going to replace the day job anytime soon. But like, I love it. I love it. It's so much fun. It's so cool to see that magazine hit mailboxes every month. Like, to get it in the mail, it comes in a little, like a team bag. You get that thing and like you bust it open. Like, I love that. If you're doing what you love, I think you'd be grateful for it. And then also, like, even in your day job, like whether it's teaching or accounting or whatever it is, I think we should be grateful for that too. Because usually that's the right balance. Like, the do the day job and then have the hobby stuff. I think usually that's probably right.
And I find for me, like, that exact sort of experience, like, there's, kind of my main role is building our database. And for me, it's ties into like that educational piece, because there's just so many sets and things out there that you either A, have lost sight of, or B, never even knew existed. And I'm like, oh, what's this? Oh, what's that? And then I'm like, oh, and then next thing I know, I'm on eBay looking for these things, or I'm hopping on MySlabs or PWCC. Where's something, where can I get the best deal on this card? Which ends up hurting my card account fund, but whatever. But I do like that outlet is so key to anything you do. You got to have an outlet, and a healthy one, right? I mean, there's a variety of outlets, and that's a conversation for another day. But one question I've always wanted to ask you, with the magazine and your journey with this magazine and the creation of it, is there one, and I don't know if it would be the first one, if that's too cliche, but is there a favorite magazine that you have? And if so, why?
I love the 90s issue that we did. I think it was issue 15 or 16. We did some extra things with that one that were really cool, and to have it sort of tied together as all about the 90s. It was awesome. That's one. We always order like a few extras, a few extra print issues, because we're not a fulfillment center. You have to be subscribed prior to the magazine coming out. That's a problem. People don't like that about magazines, but I think we ordered like an extra 20 or something, and they were gone in like a week.
Really?
People love the 90s issue.
So speaking of the 90s, is that your favorite area to collect? Are you a wide range collector, or are you focus on the 90s?
So right now, I'm going to answer your question in a little bit of a roundabout way. Right now, I'm counting down my 100 best items in my collection on my Instagram. And in the top 10, I will have cards from the 2010s, cards from the 2000s, cards from the 90s, I think those are the only decades that are covered in the top 10. But every decade from the 40s to the present, not the 20s actually. I don't have anything from the 2020s, and that's funny. I don't have anything that's super modern.
Yeah.
But every other decade is covered in my collection. I just posted yesterday a Mikan 48. It was number 48.
I saw that.
On my top 100. I love that card.
That's sweet card. You know, speaking of cards you recently purchased, that Kevin Garnett Super Refractor, dude, that is sick.
I love that card. So this is like I like where I've ended up as a collector. I like that. I mean, obviously, like some people are like, of course you do. You just bought a $10,000 Kevin Garnett card, and of course you like that. But I don't buy cards very often, right? Like, I'll have sub 10 mail days this whole year. And it'll probably be more like 5 or 6. And you know, maybe I don't know, maybe it'll be more. That's probably wrong. Maybe it could be as many as 10 or maybe even 15. I'm not sure, but it's a low number. The framework of having a hierarchy of your collection, of having like a top 100, for me, that was critical to my success as a collector, because it really focused me on what I wanted. And I don't just let myself sort of go all willy-nilly all over the place like I used to. I focus on what I really like. And so, you know, you mentioned the Garnett card. I loved Kevin Garnett as a kid when he was with the Timberwolves. He was one of my favorite players. We got to Boston, not as much, honestly. But like, he has superfractors from 2004 to 2009. So he has 6 superfractors. 3 of them are with Minnesota. 3 of them are with Boston, I think. I think those numbers are right. And he won 1 championship in all of those. So he has 1 championship superfractor. Like, I own that. It's mine now. And that's so cool. Like, I love it. But anyway, back to the Mikan real quick. Like, the sort of like decade, like what kind of collector I am. If I had to describe myself as a collector, I would say I'm 2 things. 1, say I'm a rare card collector. I don't buy cards that are always available. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that's great, but that's not where I've ended up. And then the other thing that I would say is I do skew towards players that have already cemented who they are. And so not totally, because I've got like a few younger players. But I find myself selling those quickly. I have a hard time selling a Kobe Bryant card that I really like. I have a really hard time selling a Jordan card that I really like. I recently sold a Ja Morant card. I took the biggest loss of my entire life on that card.
Really?
And I still didn't care that much because I just didn't need a Ja Morant card in my collection.
I hear you. All right, so I know we're kind of up against the wall here. I want to ask you one last question. As
still
a
10
hobby,
minutes, by the way. Still 10 minutes.
And I think this one could take a little bit, though.
Okay.
So, as a hobby veteran, guy who is, you know, you definitely are, I would consider yourself to be in the know and have some really good connections and things like that. So you have a wealth of knowledge. If you were Michael Rubin and you owned Fanatics, how would you take that company into this space?
Well, I think this is about as good of a question as you can ask. I don't know that I have a great answer. I think I'd like to think about this a lot longer, but in the spirit of we have a podcast and we need to answer it, I'll give you my best answer for now.
Okay.
People try to make this a simple answer, and they talk about focusing on the collector. It's a simple answer, but I think it's the right answer. And I think talking about what that means is important.
Sure.
So when we talk about a card producer as of today, we have to kind of look at everything that's happened thus far and realize that we can't change it, right? You can't change what was done in the 90s. You can't change what's happened since then. What you can do is you can say, what right now will benefit the hobby the most? And you hear people talk about things like, I've heard Nat Turner mention like no more redemptions.
Yep.
No more sticker autographs, things like that. Those things are definitely good.
Yep.
But the number one thing that I think that we need to do is focus on how, like, what collectors want and how we can get it to all of them. Today, ironically, I'm going to tie this in. Follow me to the punchline here a little bit, because I think it's gonna. I think this really matters, and I think it's a good answer. So today, the Utah Jazz, where I live in Utah. They announced that after the last, it's been, I think, 25 years of having to buy a cable contract to be able to watch their games or have a special satellite thing. Today, today's June 20th. Today, they announced that they will be returning after 25 years to broadcasting games on local television.
Oh, wow.
And so what that means is, as long as you've got the rabbit ears, you can watch all Jazz games.
That's cool.
And I spent like 10 minutes thinking about this, thinking about, from Ryan Smith's the owner. And I met Ryan once. I've got good friends who are close to Ryan, who think a lot of him, and they're people who I think a lot of. And so, I tend to sort of have this sort of natural positive bias towards Ryan Smith. But you think about a decision and what this looks like, there's massive financial, things, because like the providers get so much money, they give so much money. And then they sell ads and whatnot. And so, it's a huge decision. But the thing that's really clear to me about a decision like this is it's a decision for the future. The games are broadcast, a lot of people are just streaming them for free now anyways, illegally. And a lot of people are just watching highlights on Twitter. And there's this huge percentage of people who would like to watch games that can't, because they're not willing to spend a couple $100 a month to be able to get the package, to be able to watch them. And so I think from a person like Ryan Smith's perspective, he's probably saying like, man, this sucks that we have all of these people who want to watch these games and they're not watching them because we have this financial situation with this other group that we've been aligned with for the last 25 years. And I think he said today, I'm going to stop selling out to that. And I'm going to think really about our brand and about who we are and how we can move forward. And he made the hard decision in the short term, and it might even be hard decision financially for the long term. I mean, it might be a really hard decision for a long time, but he made that decision because it was best for the product. It was best for the consumer. It was best for the brand. And if you compare, so now if we take that story and we now move it over to your question, which is a great question, JD, about Fanatics and about Michael Rubin. If I'm Michael Rubin, if I'm consulting Michael Rubin, I say, what is your corollary? What is like that? And the answer is, it always comes back to this. The answer is, how do you keep kids who don't have a ton of money interested in what we're doing? We used to have card shops where you could go in and you could have $1 and you could get something. We don't have that really. I mean, we do, because we have amazing owners, amazing LCS owners. But what we don't have is an easy way to have kids sort of like with any amount of money really invested in something. And then if we do, it's like some small one-off product that doesn't really hold their attention for a long time. Why? Because everybody puts all of their attention on the highest dollar things. There's one regret that I have from my time at BCF. It's that we've highlighted a disproportionate amount of super high dollar stories and high dollar items. There's nothing wrong with that. At this point, people would probably say I'm a high dollar collector, so I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But what we need to do is we need to focus on what is interesting to common people, and we need to let them know that they're welcome, and we better treat them the same way as we treat the super rich people. But people in this world don't do that. People favor the rich people, and drives me crazy because that's not what's going to lead us to the right place. So sorry, that was a long answer.
No,
there's something good in there.
That was for kind of being put on the spot, my friend. That was a well done answer. I think that I did not think about that. I have my own thoughts as well. One of them is limiting sets. I think there's just way too many sets. I think creating like a low end, middle end, high end type release each month to kind of appease everybody is a something I would like to see. Um, and again, I just think the kids is huge. So how do you get the kids to involved and stay involved, right?
But let me interrupt real quick. And I know we're out of time. If we go
Yep.
a couple of minutes over, I'm probably okay. But let me just say, like, I am so keenly aware of the idea of having shareholders and investors.
Yep.
Like, I get it. And
Yep.
common people don't understand this. When that sounded way too. I didn't mean that
No.
sound,
Yep.
but like, it's true. Like, people don't
Yep.
think about the financial aspects. So think about what Fanatics spent, right? On licenses, what they're going to continue to spend, what they spend on PWCC, what they're going to spend on other big companies in the space. You can't let just this sort of like idea of like collecting and you can't let that drive everything. But you have to let it drive everything. Because if you don't, then you lose it in the long term. You've got to make it appealing for the long term. And so that's really a hard balance to strike.
That's a hard, man. Like, that's not easy, I do think that, I know exactly what you're saying with the shareholders and things like that. It's very easy to not understand that or overlook that or things like that. But, navigating those waters is not easily done, right? Because again, like, you're going to have people that love it. You're going to have people that hate it. And it's just like, how do you find that happy medium? It's a great debate question for, I'm sure, the next few years, but anyways, listen, I know you got to run, man. I appreciate your time here. Again, I can't thank you enough. We've been trying to connect for quite a while, man. Like, I feel like it's been like a good year. We've been trying to carve out like an hour. So I really appreciate this, and hopefully at some point, maybe in the next few months, we can get together again for a little, excuse me, a little longer bit of time, and we'll go from there. But I wish you well, and like I said, I'm a big fan. We're a big fan of you over here at Card Hedge, and continue doing what you're doing, man. I appreciate it. And why don't you let everybody know where they can find you on Instagram? I'm sure most people know, but for those that don't.
JD, I wish you and Card Hedge the best. Let's do it. I'd love to get together. The only thing that limits us is time. I'd love to do it all. I'd love to do it every week if we could. But time is always short, and you don't always get to do all the things you want to do. But I hope that you and the company just continue to just crush it, and I'd love seeing the positive growth and keep it going and keep innovating and making it the best that you possibly can.
For sure.
As far as for me, at the Real 27 guy on Instagram, Basketball Card Fanatic magazine is bcfmag.com for anybody who wants to subscribe. You can get your monthly magazine for $10 a month. And so we take a lot of pride in that. It'll be delivered to your home and you'll receive it digitally. And we think that it's a worthwhile product. So Basketball Card Podcast, you can find on all the different places that are out there. And then, if you're interested in looking at some of the cool content that we're creating on Instagram, again, hit at the Real 27 guy, trying to do some stuff right now that I think that people will really like, and the reception so far has been really good. So
been
thanks,
great, man.
Thanks to anybody who's new. Appreciate it.
Thank you, my friend, and everybody listening. Those links will be down below in the video description. So nice, easily clickable for you. And like I said, I highly recommend Adam and his products that he's creating, first class all the way around. So Adam, thank you for your time, and everybody, thanks for listening. Until the next episode, we'll be seeing you. Thank you.